Hello and welcome back to the True North CFL podcast. I am your host, Jimmy Leach. You can follow me on Twitter at Jimmy Leach CFL.
I'm James Tees. You can follow me at James_TEES on Instagram.
Alright, so this episode is going to be a bit more draft centric. It's not going to be necessarily a, in-depth breakdown, but we're going to be posting our mock drafts, and this podcast just kind of go along with that to explain why we made the picks we made. And yeah, it's going to be our second mini episode, so this episode isn't going to be as long as some of our other ones. And before I forget, I'm going to plug the socials. It's usually Taylor does that, but he's not here. So don't forget to go and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can listen to the podcast on Apple Podcast, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. So without further ado, let's get into our mock drafts. So the first overall pick in this year's draft, it belongs to Hamilton. And I have them selecting Terrell Jana, a wide receiver out of Virginia. And James, you also have them picking a wide receiver, but a different one. You have them picking Josh Palmer out of Tennessee. So why Josh Palmer?
Well, I personally think Terrell Jana is not a good football player. He only had like 400 yards this year and one receiving touchdown. He's played second fiddle a lot in the Virginia offense. Not even. He only really started this year and wasn't very productive. I have Josh Palmer because there's something about him I like. I don't know if he's gonna stick in the NFL, even though he had a really good Reese's Senior Bowl showing. I think it's just he didn't really produce, and Tennessee didn't have a very good quarterback this year. That's why people might be hesitant to get him in the NFL draft. But I like him in the CFL. 6'1 and a half, 210 pounds, pretty good. He checks all the boxes for a CFL receiver, and he if he doesn't get an NFL opportunity, hey, come up in Canada, ball out, maybe go back like his former Tennessee teammate. I forget his name at this.
Uh,
Ted
Kongbo, I think is who you're
Ted
thinking of.
Kongbo, yes, Ted Kongbo, just like him. Play a year, get a feel for the CFL, then go back, and then they have your rights just in case.
That's fair. For me, I have them picking Jana because I think we both identified the same need. They need a receiver to replace Mike Jones, who no longer with the team. The reason I didn't pick Palmer is because I've heard kind of with, as you mentioned, his Senior Bowl showing and the fact that what was it? He had a very good pro day. So I'm hearing rumors he might be either a late or mid round draft pick in the NFL. So he might be there for a couple years, or like a full year at the least. Whereas Jana might be ready immediately right away to step in and play.
Yeah, I
So
agree, 100%. Jenna's not getting an NFL opportunity. I bet my life on it.
yeah,
Okay, I know it's a little out there to say, but he's not an NFL player.
I mean, I watched this film. He looks very polished as a receiver in terms of what's on tape. I mean, obviously that was from last year where he beat out last year's second overall pick, Dejon Brissett, for the wide receiver job at Virginia. But again, yeah, I don't know. He's definitely not as good as Palmer, but I feel like he's definitely going to be ready, whereas Palmer might take a little while. So if you're
Mhm.
wondering why he's not in my mock draft, that's why. I just think he's going to stick around a little bit.
Yeah, he'll definitely get some practice squad opportunities, workouts. But a lot of what this draft is NCAA guys that aren't going to be playing right away.
Definitely. Like, there's going to be some guys that you're going to have to wait a year to see them come and play in Canada. We'll get to those guys when we get there, but for now, let's move on to the number 2 pick, which belongs to the Saskatchewan Roughriders. We have them selecting the same guy, and you got me hyped on this guy too. Logan Bandy out of the University of Calgary.
Yeah, Logan, big tackle, 6'5", 290 pounds, getting NFL looks for sure, but he might not stick around. Who knows? He might be like Carter O'Donnell, stick on a practice squad for a few years, and he's better than Carter O'Donnell was in college wholeheartedly. He beat out Carter for first team All Canadian spot in 2018. 2019, he was a second team. That's because he missed one game with a leg injury, which he played with. He's by far the best U Sports O lineman in this draft, and I think he's better than a lot of the NCAA guys in this class, to be quite frank. And he will stick around in the NFL if he's able to put on a little bit more weight. If not, I think he's immediate impact starter at the offensive tackle position.
Yeah, I feel like he could do that, or the Riders that might try to move him into guard because the Riders they like their American tackles, but I mean, at the same time, right? Like there isn't really any high end guards in this draft when I look at things because you know Brendan Labatt and Dan Clark aren't getting any younger, so they need to draft some young blood to go and replace those guys in a couple years. And as you mentioned, Bandy's probably the best O line pick in this draft, so to me that makes the most sense for him to go to Saskatchewan there.
I I'm wholeheartedly sold on this guy. I think he's better than Mark Corte, who's from U of A, who's a starting left tackle in Ottawa. I know Logan can be a starting tackle in CFL,
Interesting.
but I understand the guard comparison. But he's 6'5". He can play guard tackle. He can play either, but just he's a leaner built O lineman, so he fits better at tackle with his long arms because he's not above 300 pounds. And you don't want to get bullied on the interior. Interior guys are always a lot heavier.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. So usually the thinner guys are at tackle generally.
Guys with longer arms. That's why tackle is not necessarily about height. It's a lot of to do with your arms,
Okay.
how long they are when going against defensive ends. And guards usually have the shorter arms because a D tackle is usually shorter and heavier, and it has to do with your center of gravity a lot of the time. But
Oh,
slender guys will play tackle because you have to be fast for a tackle, and Logan is huge, extremely fast.
that's fair. So moving on to the Bombers pick at number 3. I have them drafting Pierre Oliver Lestage out of the University of Montreal, and you have them with Daniel Joseph out of NC State. So let's hear what you have to say.
Well, first off with Pierre, he got absolutely bullied in the UFC Vanier Cup, to be fair, but Jamin Pelly, I've talked about him at nauseum on this podcast. He's going to the NFL when it's time. Uh, Pierre surprisingly is not that big of a guy. Like if you look at him, he's not very big, but that doesn't mean anything. It's not like he's going to have NFL opportunity. I think he's a CFL guy, and I think he could be a immediate contributor, being from the University of Montreal, where that's just a school that just breeds CFL players. Like that Laval and UFC are just they're CFL factories, and I think he could develop into something on the interior, but their line on the interior is looking good. That is a good pick. But I picked Daniel Joseph just because I don't think he's going to get an NFL opportunity, but he's big. He's like a 6'4", 270-pound end, uh, 6.5 sacks at NC State. He originally played at Penn State and transferred, but I don't think he declared for the draft. He is a graduate student transfer to North Carolina State, but he is not declared for the NFL draft, so he is going back for another year. So we'll kind of see how he pans out.
That's fair. Yeah, I think it was a good move for him to transfer because he was more of a rotational guy at Penn State, whereas I think he was more of a guy at NC
And
State.
then
And
yeah, he was the guy at defensive end there.
yes, he showed up pretty well. So we'll see what happens with him. I have him mocked not much far down, but I know Winnipeg. They're looking for some more young blood at that O line spot, and Lestage is a decent center prospect for them in the future.
Yeah, center guard, he can play both.
And then moving on to the BC Lions at number 4, I have them taking Sage Deoxeter out of New Mexico State, and you have them taking Nelson Lacombo out of the University of Saskatchewan.
Uh, to say the least, BC's kind of a mess, that roster, in my opinion. I feel like they could draft anyone from any position and that'd be a help. But I just feel like a Canadian linebacker like Nelson Lacombo, he will get NFL opportunity for sure, considering he was the U Sports defensive MVP last year. Just a real hitter at linebacker. Sage Doxeter also brings something is he is a pure tackle, and it's hard to find a pure Canadian tackle. He's 6'7", 350. I know he's having a spring season pretty soon. New Mexico State is, I think I believe began playing this month. Uh, he's a good fit. Nelson Lacombo, they're both interchangeable, so to speak. But you know, I just don't have faith in Sage. That's just my opinion. Just because it's hard to find Canadian tackles that pan out.
That's definitely fair. I have them as drafting Sage because they've been trying to start a Canadian tackle for a really long time, whether that was Brett Boyko last year or some of the other guys they brought in. So I feel like a pure tackle like Sage would make sense for them to try and bring in and develop as, a tackle for them. Or if he doesn't work out, maybe you see him getting pushed into guard.
Highly unlikely with that height. You don't really see guards taller than 6'6", 6'5". But I will say this: he is 350 pounds. That's a struggle at tackle for sure. Because with that 1 yard, you have to be quick off the ball. It's not like the NFL where you don't have that yard and you don't have to rely on your speed off the get with your first kick. Your first kick doesn't. Your first kick has to be a lot more deeper in the CFL. You got to be a lot faster because there's that space and you want to create time.
Makes sense. So let's go on to number 5, which is the Edmonton football team's pick. This one, you have them drafting Sage, and I have them drafting Daniel Joseph. We've talked about both these guys, but what's your rationale, more or less, for him going to Edmonton?
Well, I know I just shit on him for being big, but no, they love their huge guys like O'Donnell, who's like 6'9", 370 pounds. They love these big O linemen. And I feel like their O line's getting a little bit long in the tooth at the tackle position. And it never hurts to bring young blood in. They already have a Canadian gentleman there who's similar size, who's a rookie 2 years ago because CFL didn't happen last season.
Yep.
And I feel like you might be able to pair two Canadian tackles, but I kind of see Sage as a project, not an immediate starter. Because sometimes guys with high upside are worth first round.
That's definitely fair. And I have them picking Daniel Joseph here because they have two really good Canadian defensive ends in Matthew Betts and Kwaku Boateng. So I feel like having, both of those guys, maybe you want some more depth behind them because there's a spot open with Nick Usher being gone. So theoretically, you could have two Canadian defensive ends, and if you want to do that, it would make sense to draft another talented, defensive end along with them, so to give them some depth there. So that's why I like Daniel Joseph in Edmonton.
I agree that'd be a good pickup, especially with Nick Usher gone, have a nice little rotation of Canadian guys in, and I would not be surprised if he played three tech and gets drafted.
Sure.
Because Daniel Joseph is about 270 pounds. That's the size of a three tech. When I say three tech, y'all, I mean like a D tackle that's like head up on the guard or shaded in the gap over. And like a nose is someone who's head up on the center in the one gap. Sorry if I'm getting too technical for some of you.
It's okay. We like that extra bit of knowledge that you bring. So it's always good to kind of hear that and you explain. It's like, oh, that's what that means. That's good. And then let's move on to number 6 with Ottawa. I have them drafting Liam Dobson out of Texas State. And you have them drafting Dean Leonard out of Ole Miss, formerly of the University of Calgary. So, what do you think about those guys?
Liam Dobson, or Dodson, I'm sorry if I butcher his name. He's a 6'3", 340-pound guard. He did transfer from Maine uh, to Texas, West Texas, because Maine didn't have a season and he wanted more exposure. That's why he went to West Texas. He's the best interior guy in my opinion in this draft because I don't see him going to the NFL, even if he goes to Texas State. Even though he has had success in college, he just isn't like the typical guards you see get drafted. He's like a CFL guy, you know. He's one of these guys. He plays his time in the NCAA. He's good, but he's not good enough for the NFL. But who knows? He could prove me wrong. And then I went with Dean Leonard here because Dean has another year at Ole Miss. So, half of these guys are going back for a year, have NFL opportunities. But I just feel like Dean is going to turn into something good because he started the second half of the season at Ole Miss and had a game-saving fumble recovery against South Carolina. And I think Dean, you know, I just have faith in this guy that he's going to end up being an absolute ball hawk next year. And that was my justification because Ottawa is in the shitter, so to speak. Their roster's horrible. Besides the gentleman that they got rid of in Toronto for
Cleon Lang.
a million blanks. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
guys.
I think you're thinking of Cleon Lang, defensive tackle.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree. They Ottawa team, they don't really have a ton of high end skill anywhere. And the reason I have them drafting Dobson is because they lost Evan Johnson, who
Hmm.
was a critical guy for them. He could kind of play anywhere. He was played games at tackle, he played games at guard, and I feel like Dobson can kind of fill that same role. And also an interesting statistic, I believe Ottawa has picked an O lineman in the first round every year they've been in the league except for one.
Hey,
So it's a
lots to
pretty
say for
safe bet.
draft, you know?
Exactly. And then let's see here. Oh yeah, Dean Leonard. I'm also going to talk about him. Yeah, because I know you told me to look out for him. Yeah, he didn't do much at the start of the year, but he really did pick it up at the end of the year, and he looked really good. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him in this draft. How do scouts view that he didn't do much that first half of the season? Do they, get Oz fired by that second half and draft him? What happens there?
Hmm.
And then let's move on to number 7, which is the Argos pick. I have them drafting Patrice Rene, who transferred to Rutgers, and you have them drafting Mohamed Diallo, I believe is how you say that name, out of
Hello.
Western Michigan.
Yeah, he played JUCO a few years back. And I remember hearing about, but I forgot the guy's name. I was like, oh, this guy from JUCO who was Canadian, I never really heard about, signed to Texas A&M to play for Jimbo Fisher. That was Mohamed Diallo. He didn't work out at Texas A&M, so he transferred to Western Michigan, where he only started 4 games last year. But you have to sit time out when you transfer, so I feel like he didn't get a fair shake, so to speak. And he is a guy who I think is a baller that could step up because he did have pretty decent sacks. He only didn't start 2 games at Western Michigan with a condensed season, and he looked fairly decent. I feel like Toronto could use some depth at D tackle, and it's not like he's going anywhere. He's not getting an NFL shot. And if I'm not mistaken, he does have another year at Western Michigan, so we'll see how this pans out. And with Patrice Rene, I think he's an NFL guy. He started tons of games at North Carolina, but he got hurt, kind of lost his starting spot to a young recruit who was a 5 star. Are you going to start an aging vet or a 5 star who has a bunch of years left? You're going to go with the 5 star instead of a guy who has an injury history. I think he's going to do well at Rutgers, and I think he will see an NFL opportunity depending on how he plays at Rutgers. But if he declared based on his North Carolina, I think his draft stock would have been pretty good for the NFL. But he's one of these guys I don't see coming to the CFL immediately. Probably in a couple of years.
That's fair. For me, I knew that again, Toronto, they have a DB in, I believe it's Matthew Boateng, who
Yeah,
has kind of been in limbo between that DB and that safety position. With a guy like Rene, he could, that Boateng could be a nice backup for him. He definitely did have a ton of NFL interest until he got that, I believe it was an Achilles injury in North Carolina, and obviously that all dried up. So he's transferring. It'll be interesting to see how he performs at Rutgers.
yeah, and he's a big guy. I couldn't see him sliding to linebacker if they did Patrice Rene.
Yeah, true. He looks like a Sam, like with how big he is. I could see him going down and playing that spot. Because Sam, especially now, it's looking more like a hybrid position between like a DB and a linebacker. So,
Yeah, it's
like,
just a cover linebacker basically.
yeah, so I feel like a guy like Rene might fit that mold kind of well. And then number 8, this pick belongs to Calgary. I have them picking Mohamed Diallo, who we just talked about. And you have them drafting Terrell Jana. So let's just talk, because we talked about both these guys again, so let's talk about our reasoning for this.
I have Terrell Jana going here because the Stamps need receiver depth because they lost a bunch, like Eric Rogers to Toronto. Let guys walk, when they were playing in 2019. It was apparent they needed receiver help because all they had was an Eric Rogers and Hergy Mayala. Mayala's going to be unreal. Why not pair him with another guy who's one of these NCAA guys who didn't have a crazy good career who could come up here and ball and make a name and make some money in the CFL? That's my reasoning. I just don't think he's worth that number one spot because he's not the best prospect. That also might be why he deserves the number one spot because he's not good enough for the NFL. He can come
Exactly.
here and
That's my mythology. Is he's a really polished receiver, so I think if you put him in Calgary with Bo, that could be a very scary combination, or even in Hamilton with Mazzoli. But yeah, that's kind of my reasoning too. Is like he could be really dangerous in the CFL because he can kind of play right away. But with a guy like Palmer, you're probably gonna have to wait for him. So I guess it depends on your patience. Yeah, Calgary's got some good Canadian content at receiver with Hergy Mayal is an absolute monster. I think they had one or two other guys too
yeah,
who
Michael
were really good.
Klukas.
hmm And then I had them drafting Diallo because I feel like they could use a bit more Canadian, I guess, depth on the in the interior. So to
Well, they
back
do
up
have a
maybe
guy
Derek
from
Wigan.
Laval. They have Desjardins from Laval. They just drafted
Oh yeah, that's
um,
true.
the gentleman from McGill who's unreal in college. He was like Aaron Donald in college, Canadian college, so to
Ooh.
speak. He was he was the best D tackle.
Yeah, yeah. I think I know what you're talking about. I can't remember his name
Andrew
though.
Spinet Spalding.
Oh yeah, we did talk about him last year. Yeah, I could definitely see, maybe they start 2 Canadians. So maybe that works too. Maybe they just add some more depth there. But definitely, I don't know. Yeah, Calgary's got some good defensive tackles, so it'll be interesting to see what they do there. So at number 9, this is Hamilton's pick because Montreal traded this pick. So if you're wondering why, there's 2 Hamilton picks here, that's why. I have them drafting Christopher Fournier, offensive lineman out of Lehigh, and you have them drafting Benjamin St. Jude, who's a DB slash safety out of Minnesota.
Yeah, Benjamin St. Juste, he's probably going to get drafted in the third round of the NFL draft, realistically, but so are a lot of the guys in the first round. They're going to be late round picks. But honestly, realistically, I don't think we're going to have a CFL season. So why not go in on dudes who are going to be boomer bust in the NFL and may need a CFL to develop? Why not just go in? Like, in my opinion, I feel like this draft doesn't even matter because I don't think we're having a season. I'm kind of going off my own
Interesting.
rant, but
Okay.
I'm saying just go in on guys you want. Go in on the guys you want. Who cares? The U Sports guys that are people aren't, oh, they're not going after them because they didn't play NCAA. You know what? These guys are going to be around in the late rounds, so why not just blow your early round pick on some guys who might not even be there? Then you can pay these U Sports guys peanuts, okay?
That's fair. I do think I'm on the other end of that. I do think we're going to get some form of a season. I don't think it's going to be an 18 game season, but I think maybe we'll have something in August, September once most people are vaccinated. So I think we differ on that, but I definitely have heard that talk a lot that there's might not be a season, and that's a scary thought if that happens again.
Yeah, they rely on fans, and if no fans, they're not making money, so it's gonna be tough. But I'm just saying this because a lot of these guys are going back for a year and don't have a season. It doesn't really matter. Draft pick, and
Yeah,
if we
that's
don't have
true.
youth sports is going to have a season. I promise you that.
Yeah,
And these guys are going to be playing the youth sports guys, and they're going to be ready for when that CFL show comes back. I'm telling you.
sure. I hope again that we do have a season, but you never know, right? Like we thought we might have a bubble last year, but we didn't. So, you know. And then back to our mock here. I have Fournier because Chris Van Zyl isn't getting any younger. This guy was a multi-year starter at tackle at Lehigh. So again, it checks off the boxes if, in a couple years Van Zyl is ready to hang it up, you have a tackle who can come in and, take his spot in a year or two. So that's why I have them drafting this guy there. And even if he doesn't work out at tackle, he's got experience at center as well. So
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I've never heard of this guy.
that's fair. That's fair. I found him when I was doing my mocks. I consulted some of the already existing ones to find guys because in the top 20 list that the Scouting Bureau has, probably about five of those guys are going to get serious NFL shots. So you can't really. It leaves you with some holes, I guess. So you got to go and look at what other people are saying to go and fill those holes. So he's a guy that I
Oh, he's
looked
a
at and said, all right, multi-year starter
he's,
at tackle. That's impressive.
yeah. He played FCS. He's I forget, he's 6'4", 275. That's not big. Weight wise, that's very light for an O lineman. Many guys exceed 300 pounds.
That's fair. And then so let's go to round two. This is our first Montreal Alouettes pick. I have them drafting Alonzo Day out of West Virginia. And then you have them drafting Pierre Oliver Lestage out of Montreal. I like that pick because Danny Machocha is now the GM at Montreal, and he used to, I believe, be the coach at the U of M. So he's been picking up a lot of U of M guys in free agency. So
I'm
I like
saying
that pick.
grow hometown talent. That's why my next pick, I have him going Calgary, hometown talent. Besides it making sense, but you know, I just feel like don't Pierre's. I said he's small. Okay, he's not that big. He's not that small, but relatively speaking, but football terms, he's not a crazy big but he is very skilled. But I feel like take your most skilled guys in the first round. That's what you got to do. And Alonzo Day, oh my god, I watched some West Virginia games this year, and I was like, this guy is playing out of his mind. He was clearly the best DB on the field on that team. Some of his picks are crazy that he got. I think he had a crazy one if I'm against Texas. I might be mistaken, but he played out of his mind, and he's going back for a year. He's going to get an NFL shot, but it is safe to have him because I don't think he's going to be like a crazy high pick. Because realistically, in the NFL, if you're drafted like super late, there's a good chance you get cut. So or only last a few.
That's fair. I did hear a lot of buzz about him, and I feel like Montreal, they definitely have some holes in their secondary with Deontay Evans going off to Hamilton. So he's a guy that definitely has the skill to fill that spot if he finds his way to Canada. And Montreal also took a shot at Carter O'Donnell, so I can see them doing it again here.
Yeah, well, Carter's a tackle, and the Colts re-signed him this free agency.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah, a little bit of a bigger deal. I think he makes the active roster this.
That'd be interesting. I know you're a Colts fan, so you probably know their needs better than I do. How are they at tackle?
Well, they have no left tackle. He just retired, Anthony Costanzo. But besides that, last year they had the best O line. They have the best guard in the NFL, Quentin Nelson.
Yep,
They have a top four center, Ryan Kelly. The right guard sucks, but they have a guy who's like Carter's best friend on the team, according to Instagram, Danny Pinter, who's kind of getting set up to fill that role when they go on Glowinski. And then they have a top 10 right tackle in Braden Smith. But, you know, Carter just needs a little bit more time to develop. Like, jumping from U Sports to the Indianapolis Colts is huge.
for
So,
sure.
he might develop to something, but they do love their depth on the old Colts.
Okay, that's good. So hopefully he gets to stick around then. And let's go to our next pick here. Who does that belong to? That belongs to Calgary. I have them drafting Deshaun Stevens, who's listed as a linebacker but projects as a CFL defensive end out of Maine. And then you have them drafting Tyler Packer, an offensive tackle out of Calgary. I have not heard of him at all, so you're gonna have to enlighten me on him.
So, the gentleman out of Maine, I could see him playing DN because he's pretty big. Because DNs in the CFL are like 6'1", 40. He's a big guy. He's like, what, 255, 250?
Yeah,
I could definitely see him being an edge rusher. Guess what? Get you a guy that's versatile that can play both. Because if he's athletic to play linebacker, that size in the States, good shot he can play linebacker up here. And I think that's a tremendous pick. And you take him in the second round because he's a safe pick. So Tyler Packer here. Tyler Packer, so he's a 4-year starter on the Dinos.
ooh,
Andy, as a freshman, was a backup, but that's because he came in pretty skinny. Tyler's huge. I played against him in high school. I didn't hit my full potential till like the 12th grade, but I played him in the 11th grade, and this guy was like 6'7", 130.
oh my god, that's nuts. He's yeah, he's a big boy. So a 4-year starter too. That's impressive. Yeah, I'll have to keep my eye on him.
He runs
Was
110.
oh, say
He's a
again.
right tackle. He's a right tackle.
All right.
Calgary's biggest need is a right tackle because Casati is a turnstile. I have no idea how he got re-signed. Combre Williams, left tackle, and then center Sean McEwen, right guard, the gentleman from Calgary. I don't want to butcher his last name, so I'm not even going to attempt it. Ryan Seaver. I always think it's Skeever Seaver. And
Okay.
then Packer at right tackle or let him develop. He in 2017 he went up against Matthew Betts when they played Laval, which they lost, and he looked pretty good. He looked decent as a rookie, but he started every single game at Calgary at right tackle and an all star. He's a very solid guy, but he's never been an all Canadian like the first team I know of. Andy's just built different, but Packer is still one of the best tackles in the country.
It's interesting,
Best
yeah.
best right. Bandy's left, he's right.
Oh,
Fun
okay.
fact: the Dinos are losing every single starting O lineman to the CFL draft.
Wow. That's gonna be interesting for them next year for sure then.
They
And
can all come back for a year.
oh, another thing to add on Stevens, I know apparently someone in Calgary said they intend to start one Canadian defensive end with the guy they got last year probably being the starter and
Wind.
uh Connor McGough probably backing him up. I feel like Stevens might be some nice additional depth at that spot.
Isaac Ediemi Berglund, man, I watched his highlights against LSU. I was kind of bummed about the pick, and I saw him just working guys against LSU and sacking Joe Burrow 2 times and hammering him.
Yep.
He just was too small for the NFL, bro. I think he's going to be something good. I got hyped, but I could be a prisoner of the moment. That's my own team. But objectively speaking, I didn't realize how good he was. I'm
The fact that he's ripping it up against LSU, I mean, that's a good thing for sure. And them saying they want to start a defensive end who's Canadian, that's also really good news for him. So hopefully he does turn into something. Then let's get on to the third pick in the second round, which belongs to the Argos. I have them drafting Benjamin St. Jude here, who we already talked about, and then you have them drafting Patrice Rene, who we also already talked about. So let's kind of go into our rationale here.
well, to be quite honest, both of those guys are kind of NFL opportunity guys. That's why they dropped to the second. They were sure shot CFL guys. They'd be in the first round, no doubt. They're so skilled, both of them. St. Juice ripped it up against Penn State, Michigan last year, and this year ripped it up against him again. He's been lights out. He did transfer from Michigan a few years ago, playing too good. Came to Minnesota, fresh start, NFL looking guy. That's why they're second round guys. That's why mine differs because I don't really care where the placement is. I feel like in this draft, you draft the best player available or fits the needs, who's the best of their. But I get what Jimmy Leach here is doing by putting him in the second round because he has high NFL hope.
True. And I feel like Toronto, with the way they've been signing guys this offseason, they like to make splashes. And I mean, they do also need a starting safety. So, I mean, if, for whatever reason it doesn't work out for him in the NFL, there's a spot for him in Toronto for sure. Then, yeah, I like the Rene pick too again because I also had him mocked in Toronto, but in the first round and I've already kind of explained my reasons there. So let's jump ahead here to the fourth pick in the second round, which belongs to Ottawa. I have them taking Nick Cross out of the UBC, and then you have them taking Liam Dobson out of Maine here. So why don't you talk about these guys?
Well, I will say this: Cross is a crazy linebacker who I could see like a starter, maybe immediately, or at least a control, not getting sent back. If I'm not mistaken, he had a suspension at one point. Same with a lot of the linebackers, like Grant McDonald got busted for PEDs. Shocking that a lot of these guys failed drug tests, and ironically, that's both BC linebackers who keep hot.
Yeah,
Anyway, as I digress, OL reigns king, offensive line reigns king. Draft, that's what OL means. Uh, that's why Ottawa's got to take. They need to fill gaps on their O line, and hey, let's have an all Canadian O line on the Red Blacks. Yeah,
yeah, it's
that's
fair.
what I like. But then with Cross, they also need linebacker help big time. Even though they have Micah Awe, but maybe bring this guy in. Awe mentors him. I know Awe hasn't been in the league a long time, but he's a solid player who has valuable knowledge. And maybe groom him where he can play beside him. I feel like Cross could play Mac and outside linebacker. Probably not Sam. It's like being a cover linebacker in the CFL. You got to be a deep.
Yeah, for me, I've known about Nick Cross forever because he was in high school at the same time I was, and he's a very well-known guy in Saskatchewan football because he played at Leopoldus, who produces a ton of CFL players. So everybody was like, "Hey, keep an eye on this kid. He's going to be something special," and he's an athletic freak. So I definitely think he's going to be a very kind of mobile will linebacker. I think that's probably what he projects to be in the CFL. And with Ottawa losing, I believe it's Avery Williams and Kevin Brown in free agency, I feel like Micah Awe fills that one spot, and Nick Cross goes and fills the other with that pick. So that's kind of my methodology there.
Yeah, I agree. they're very slim pickings. I'm surprised Micah Awe went there.
Yeah,
My bad.
man.
Linebacker,
Maybe he didn't like that I was grading Ottawa too low, so he decided to go and sign there. You know, because
make it pay. I
yeah,
understand.
I remember I saw him commenting on our Instagram post like, "Oh, really? This grade?" I'm like, "Oh no!" It's like, all right,
Oh my God, I doubt you listen to this, but I appreciate you interacting with us. Big fan. Keep
isn't
up
it
the good
Micah Awe or is it Ah?
shit. I don't even know. I haven't heard a CFL broadcast in so long.
I know.
I
We're
feel
very deprived here at the podcast. I believe it's
I'm,
Micah Awe, but if I'm saying it wrong, please correct me if you're listening to this, Micah Awe. So
yeah, I'm dyslexic. Not actually. That was a bad joke.
it's like Mike Edom. I guess how you say his name is Edom,
That's
or
what I thought it was Mike Edam.
yeah, it's Mike Edom or Edgem or something like that. Like there's a different pronunciation, and it's that other pronunciation. It's not actually Mike Edom.
No, that's like last year Dequois. I was just butchering it. Last year, well, I think multiple people on the podcast are saying like
Yeah,
Dequois, but Dequois because they're just a bunch of Western hillbillies.
yeah.
Not actually. I'm just saying that's like the stereotype.
We don't have a single person from out east that works on this podcast. The furthest east we have for a person that works on this is some Manitoba kids. Otherwise, it's James is a Berta boy. Taylor and I are from Saskatchewan, and then editor Brandon and our other host Carter are from Manitoba. So yeah, this is a very Western centric podcast. Just so you
Yeah,
know.
people just don't care about football unless it's like Hamilton.
Yeah, like well, Ottawa's got a decent fan base, but I mean they're in a
Yeah,
rough spot right now.
yeah. It's also kind of a big city. Hamilton, like that good.
That's for sure. Yeah. I'm hoping that we still eventually get that 10th team way down the road because Halifax is a nice sports town. I know the Halifax Mooseheads have a very devoted fan base in terms of and it's a big enough city definitely to support a team. So
Yeah,
I
and
do
some of
hope we
their
get that 10th team and hopefully another good fan base out east.
like a team like Mount A and SMU, they get pretty good turnouts for teams out east who aren't in crazy big.
True. The biggest issue with having a team out east is there's no like infrastructure for stadiums other than Moncton. And
Yeah,
Moncton's in a nice spot, but it alone definitely couldn't support a team. So it's like you're gonna have to build a stadium somewhere like Halifax is the obvious one. I don't know how many other major cities. Maybe St. John and Newfoundland could support a team, but those are really the only two. You know?
yeah, it's their population's so dispersed out there. It's not.
True. So let's move on to the fifth pick in round two, which is Edmonton's. I have them with Nelson Lacombo out of the U of S, and then you have them with Alaric Jackson out of Iowa. Oh, that's an interesting pick. Let's hear your reasoning on that one.
If Ulrich came to the CFL right now, he'd be the best CFL offensive lineman in my opinion.
Ooh,
Uh,
that's a take.
that is a take, man. He was pretty good. He's like a 3 year starter at left tackle at Iowa. Iowa's like known for their O linemen. That's
Yep.
where Tristan Wirfs came, the starting right tackle on the Bucks. He was there last year as a starting right tackle, and it's just like with Ulrich, he did not look good in Senior Bowl in his one on ones. He looked slow for the level, and he's not a crazy heavy guy. He's like 6'5", 3. That's not like crazy heavy for an O lineman. It'd be different if they're like, oh, he's 350 pounds, but he doesn't have like crazy good foot speed. But the thing is, you bring him to the CFL. I know I'm like, you got to be faster, but yeah, he played at Iowa. He'd beat everyone. Okay, he'd beat on everyone. But he does have a good opportunity to be like a third round pick and switch to guard and be a competent guard in the NFL. I just feel like you take this pick because if he doesn't fit, woo, you're getting yourself like the best offensive lineman in the CFL. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, he's been on the All Big Ten team before. He's a competent player.
Yeah, he's good.
He might not translate to the NFL, but well, I'm telling you, CFL he'll tear it up.
I don't doubt that at all. I remember before the college season started, he was projected to be like I think it was a third round pick, from what I looked at, and I know he's lost some steam since then, but he's still, fairly. He's still definitely going to get drafted, so it'll
Oh
be
yeah,
interesting to see what happens
Senior
there.
Bowl. If the Senior Bowl did him no favor.
Interesting. Yeah, that's I don't know the Senior Bowl. Again, I didn't see everything. I know Josh Palmer like absolutely burned guys on one ones, and Go St. Jude did a good one. I didn't hear anything about Alaric Jackson, so that's interesting that he didn't have that good
Oh,
of a Senior Bowl.
that's where careers are made go to thrive or die, so to speak. Like people weren't sold on Justin Herbert, played in the Senior Bowl last year and tore it up. It helps a lot of guys draft stock, but he didn't even play in the game. He got injured.
Oh,
And one on
that's
one, he had like a few good one on ones, but majority of his reps at one on ones, he looked sluggish and not very good.
that's not good. And yeah, I have them drafting Lacumbo here because Edmonton lost Godfrey Onyeka, who's like again like a DB linebacker hybrid, kind of like Lacumbo is, and he's got is it his brother or a cousin that plays in the CFL right now?
Brother played at Oregon. Played for yeah, Als for
Yeah, he's super good, and Nelson is also a very talented player out of the U of S. He's a freak athlete, from what I know. Again, like his brother, he can probably play a bit anywhere. Like they both can probably play DB, safety, linebacker. So yeah, he just fills so many holes. I feel like that's you know can't really pass that up here. So I think Edmonton would definitely be interested in a guy like that.
yeah, for sure. I feel like he fits in on any team. Linebacker.
Sure. And then let's go to the sixth pick in this round, which belongs to BC. I have them drafting Grant McDonald, linebacker out of Calgary, and then you have them also drafting Grant McDonald. There we go. All right. So,
So
what do you think
first
of
up,
him?
he's from South Delta, BC. Hometown kid. You got to get your hometown guys. Played tight end at Maine, transferred to the Dinos, played linebacker, immediate starter, all Canadian, failed drug test, good starter, failed drug test. He had one failed drug test. I'm just emphasizing that.
Yeah.
But no, I think he's a good guy. He's a real hitter. He could play Mac in that system, outside linebacker. He's really athletic considering he played tight end in Division One football, even though he didn't really have the height to back it up. But then again, he was playing at football subdivision.
Yeah.
It's not FBS, and that's uh, full subdivision. That means the Natty, so what he was in. But I
Okay.
feel like that's a good pick because he's not getting NFL opportunities. So let's pick him up here. He's going to be a contributor immediately on team. And I will say this, just as we near the end of this segment. I did not put Chuba or Eamon on here, Eamon Abemamiga, only because I think they're NFL guys and Javon Holland. Javon Holland is a projected first round pick now.
Yeah, I
Marie
saw that. You showed me a mock for his top 10. I'm like, wow, all right.
Jones Drew has him top 10 because he's such a crazy athlete. He's from Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. That's why I don't have like a guy like Javon Holland, Eamon, and Chuba because I feel like they're going to get NFL opportunity. I know I put guys who are going to get NFL opportunity here, but I just felt like I just have more faith in them. And
Yeah,
also, it's just, I don't know, man. I just think they're too good. CFL
yeah.
team.
It's sort of like Chase Claypool last year. I don't think any of us mocked him in the higher rounds because we knew he was a guy that was going to stick. And I feel like both of those two that you mentioned are definitely going to stick around for a little bit. I think Chuba's stock kind of fell a little bit, but
Yeah.
I think he's
They,
going to surprise some people when he gets to play. And
they know
then Aben,
back.
same deal. You know?
Yeah, you he had no good quarterback, and that O line was kind of a mess. But the thing is, Javon Holland, Chuba, Amon are all multi-year starters. Half of these guys aren't full-time multi-year starters that are in the NCAA that we mock, or like they didn't, or if we did, they did not have like adequate production. You know what I mean? Like these guys adequately produced and were very good at their position. The thing is, St. Juice got hurt halfway, only played half the year because he got hurt. But I still think he's an NFL guy. But I just think there's questions just because his sample size is so small, where he has missed time because of injury. This is just my reasoning. I'm just going more in depth on it. And
Yeah.
like I have a guy like Ulrich here, only because if he doesn't work out in the NFL because of tackle, because he can't play tackle, that's why he's there. That's my justification. Second round.
It's fair for sure. Let's go to our next pick here. I have Winnipeg drafting Dean Leonard out of Old Miss, and then you have his face here. Oh, you have Patrick Davis out of Syracuse here. So why don't you talk about these guys?
Patrick Davis is awful. He's never started a university game at the University of Syracuse. I absolutely hate NCAA guys that don't play and then have a first round projection. I just have him here, not because I think he's going to be good. I have him here based on the school he went to and not because he's actually skilled.
That's fair, harsh, but I get the reasoning. And then for me, I had Dean Leonard here because, again, he might be a guy that you need to wait on, but the Bombers can definitely do that because they have a ton of Canadian depth. And they are another team like Montreal that has a ton of holes in their secondary.
Hmm.
So I could totally see, if Dean Leonard finds his way to the CFL, he could be a great player for Bombers for years to come.
Yeah, he just didn't reach the NCAA in time. He has the talent. It's just hard when you have a small sample size of and just like Patrick Davis, like this guy could play tackle or guard, but like if historically speaking, if you look at the CFL, these NCAA guys that don't play a lot, they don't turn out to be crazy good prospects. Like the guy from Missouri who was drafted by Montreal. I'm trying to remember his name. I forget guys' names all the time because there's such high turnaround in the CFL of guys.
Great. I'm not sure either.
Mizzou, he was a D end.
Oh, Mizzou. Oh, something Anderson.
Yeah, like this
Yeah.
guy's not good. Didn't do crap in college and he's not doing much in the CFL. It's you get here. That's the same with the D tackle from Michigan. I don't think he's going to be good. These guys don't play for a reason. And I'm
Yeah.
saying, like, I'm not saying they're bad football players, but when you don't play, you're not getting real experience. You know?
Yeah, I remember the kid from Michigan. We talked about him in more of our in-depth prospect analysis we did a while back. He was a four-star coming out of high school, but he had some serious injury issues. So he's just
That
been
was
more of a rotational guy at Michigan. So
that's why St. Juice transferred
yeah,
from.
that's why Joseph transferred. So it'll be interesting to
That's
see
why
if he
everyone
does the
transferred.
same thing.
A lot of these guys they all come from the same sujet in Montreal. It's called something de Montreal. I can't even say it. My roommate's from Quebec. Played. He's played against some some of these guys like Patrick
Yeah.
Davis. I don't even know the Cégep, but they all come from one school, and it's like a deep powerhouse in Montreal.
Oh, interesting. I know there's some prep schools in Canada that a lot of the guys go to, and then they go down
Oh,
south,
Canada
but don't
West.
know the name of it.
It's Canada West in St. Andrews College. That's where Merchant went before he left Calgary because Merchant when he played in Calgary for an awful high school, prep school, got his opportunity in Buffalo. Like that's the thing. Like Cégep, tons of guys go NCAA.
Wow.
Like Vanier College, a bunch of guys go there and then go to Syracuse or Illinois.
I've heard of Vanier College, but I remember it for basketball. They had a guy go to the NBA this year.
Yeah. It's because the thing is with Vanier, it's English speaking, so guys who aren't ready, they want to go NCAA but aren't ready. They go there because you can play sports and go to school, and that's why Vanier has like a lot of guys who are from Calgary that I know, or are from all over Canada because it's an English speaking school in Montreal.
Yeah, I have a friend who's an O lineman at Concordia. I think he's there for. I think they're an English speaking school too, so I think that's why he ended up there. Super nice, talented guy. So I hope both he and you can make something of it. 'Cause both got some skill.
Man, it's
No problem, man. I just hope you guys get a season next year. Like I want some football. You know.
yeah, just some three down football.
Yep, 3 down full. That's all I'm asking for, man. Come on. Like I'll watch you sports next year for sure. I don't care. You know. And then let's go to the second last pick of the second round, number 8. This belongs to Saskatchewan. I have them drafting Connor Bergloff, who's an O lineman out of the U of S, and you have them drafting Deshaun Stevens out of Maine.
I have Deshaun Stevens here because, with the departure of Charleston Hughes, he can rush the passer, he can play linebacker. With the departure of Cam Judge, a lot of that defense, a lot of their key contributors have left, and I feel like he can be an immediate impact guy. Um, and then the gentleman Bergloff, he's good. Like U of S is gonna just create sicko linemen. That's what they're known for.
Yep,
But I just don't see him going this high because I feel like you're gonna get these guys that trickle down. Like only the top U sports guys are gonna go at the top, but these like guys who in most years would go a lot higher are gonna drop a lot just because of that NCAA interest. Like with all the NCAA guys.
that's definitely fair. I feel like the Riders could use a guy like him though, because again they lost. Or Clark is, Clark's not getting any younger, and this guy can play both center and guard. And their other guy who is a center that was basically the future replacement, I think something Bennett. He played at Colorado. He retired, so I feel like bringing in a young Canadian, a local boy out of the U of S. Very Rider story there. And then let's go to the last pick of the second round. I have Hamilton picking up Patrick Davis out of Syracuse. And you have Alonzo Adai here. So we've talked about both those guys. What's your kind of reasoning here for that one?
Because Alonzo's an NFL caliber player who has one more year left, where they're going to play a full season of Big 12 football, and he's going to ball out again, and he's going to prove an NFL guy, but just in case. It's a just in case pick, maybe in 4 years, comes back to Hamilton and balls out. And I feel like the interior line, even though Davis could play tackle, he backup tackle at Syracuse. Syracuse's left tackle is starter.
Huh.
Uh, from the same area of Quebec. I think the one played at uh, Champlain, the other one played in Montreal, whatever it's called. And uh, I don't. I get your reasoning for Davis pick an NCAA kind of award, but they have a very solid interior O line.
Sure.
But a lot of their O line is aging, but they do have the guy from Waterloo, who's drafted in the first round, who's going to probably kick start. They already have a starting guard from the guy from UC, and starting at right guard.
Oh yeah, Darius Sirocco, isn't it?
Yeah, Siracco.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
he's a stud.
he's from Ontario. But I always forget these guys' names.
It's all good. I got a decent thing for names, but I mean I don't remember everybody, but I'm sure they'll come to all of us when we're done here and be like, oh yeah, that was his first name, but
Yeah, I remember the school more than I do.
I just remember him being like a pleasant surprise. Like
Yeah,
people were saying he was going to be a project, and he came in his rookie year and was an absolute stud. That
shocked. And the
that's how I
guy,
remember him.
I didn't even look it up. Jesse Gibbons.
Oh yeah, I forgot about him too. I forgot about last year's draft because we didn't have a season. No.
Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of these guys we're definitely gonna miss some guys, or maybe we'll get some needs wrong because then last year just it feels like a blur.
yeah,
And
sure.
then now that we're done our mock, let's do some notables that might slip up or guys that you think deserve a shout out? Like, I know you had a bunch of your teammates get drafted last year. Is there anybody who's up for this year's draft?
Luther Hakunova. I can't even say his last name. It's so long. He's originally from Edmonton. Played Edmonton Wildcats. 6'5", 200-pound receiver. Massive. He's strong. He's going to the national conference, so look out for him. He's huge. He led our team receiving touchdowns and receiving yards last year, and I think he's going to go to the CFL. Uh, Huge guy, and you don't see 6'5" guys in the CFL. And then another one of my teammates is Siobhan Barrett. He's at the National Combine. One of my best friends on my team, so I'm kind of shouting him out because of that. But you know, 6'3", 6'4", 340-pound guard, runs like a five flat 40. He's gonna put up 30 on the 225-pound press. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He's a real athlete and he can move, and I hope he does well. A lot of U Sports guys didn't really declare, but I will say this: look out for a lot of UFC's linemen. The left guard, he didn't get invited to the combine, but he's 6'7", 360 pounds.
Oh,
Um, yeah, he's huge. He actually worked at my work, still lives in Calgary, Card to move. He's huge. And then their right guard, who's better, who's not as big, he's like 6'2", 300. And his name is and it's slipping away from me. He's an Italian guy. Um, I'm trying to remember his name, but he's their better guard. It's like absolutely nasty and slipping. I'm
is
so
his
sorry.
is he like born in Italy? Because maybe he's a global then, or
No, he's not. He's not. I'm trying to remember.
oh, like heritage. You mean okay? If you you think on that, I'm gonna drop some names while you think about that. Thank you to Three Down Nation and CFL.ca who also had mock drafts. And they kind of helped with some of these later picks and getting familiar with some people. So, some shout outs here and some notables. Receiver Will Corby out of Toronto has had some buzz. Where was he from? Uh, yeah, again, University of Toronto. I think I saw him on an Instagram page called True North Ballers. Go check them out. They make a lot of good prospect content as well. Um, Dominic Johnson, wide receiver slash tight end out of Buffalo. He was originally a quarterback, and then he ended up switching positions. But big dude, good athlete. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. Uh, I believe you mentioned this guy, Peter Nicastro out of Calgary.
Yes, that was him, Peter. And Carter did get invited to the combine. I'm wrong. Yeah, Peter. Yeah, I've trained with a little bit. Man, this guy is like rock solid 300. Like, does not look 300.
Yeah, he's on a list of the three down guys here that have they have a list of notables as well. Lol Vaughn is that Michigan defensive end we were talking about. I honestly think he'd be best off to wait a year and transfer, because again he came out of high school with hype. He was a 4-star recruit, but he just simply ran into injury trouble and couldn't hold a starting job. So that's a guy that I hope you know he waits a little bit and basically does what Dale Joseph does and like wait a year and go produce somewhere else and then declare. So yeah, I think those are. Oh wait, I got to shout out the University of Regina Rams player, Kyle Borsa. You were talking about this in the group chat, James, because you saw his arms, right? We were like,
Oh, God.
those aren't U Sports arms. Those are like,
I said, yeah,
it,
he looks like an NCAA running back. I
yeah,
said, this guy does not look like a U Sports type of guy, but there's a reason for it.
yeah. He got a PED suspension. Ran a 4.38 at his pro day. That's pretty good, but he could be a guy who's a later round pick at running back. Again, like yeah, I'm looking at his arms right now. Like holy crap, those are jeez, man. I know there was some joking about he's gonna go to the Bombers and pair up with Andrew Harris because they both have PED issues, but yeah, I know he's probably one of the better players from the U of R, so I gotta shout him out there as a fellow U of R student. So yeah, that wraps the show up.
Oh, I
Thank
got
you.
one more.
Oh, okay, hit me.
Simaconda, D3 tech. He played D tackle and D end at Guelph, except he actually transferred to Carleton because a lot of stuff came out about Guelph's head coach, former UFC coach, about some racial sensitive comments.
Ooh,
Uh, yeah, that stuff is out there. That's why Elaine left. Elaine is very good. He was better than his teammate Tavius Robinson, who went to Ole Miss. But the difference is Elaine is 6'2", 240. He's not 6'9", 270. Right,
yeah,
so that
I
makes
remember
it a lot.
Robinson. He looks like a Canadian Willie Jefferson in
Yeah,
terms of
and
his
he's
size.
very,
So that concludes the show. Thank you for listening. This episode ran on a little longer than I expected, but I mean, that tends to happen with draft episodes because we're both so passionate about it. So, yeah, this is our mock draft episode going into depth on our mock draft that we're going to post. And if you're wondering why we made the picks we did, you have a really long explanation of why we did it. So, again, thank you very much for listening. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Just search True North CFL Podcast. You can also find the show and listen to it if you don't want to listen to it on YouTube or whatever platform you found us on. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. And I am your host, Jimmy Leach. This is the True North CFL Podcast signing off.
bye.